Hi, and welcome back to Hope Restored Lessons from the Storms. This is a bonus podcast. It was unplanned. However, we've been getting a lot of questions and comments regarding the pandemic and things that are going on in our world, videos that are floating around on the Facebook and whatnot. And we've noticed that there's a tremendous amount of noise, just a whole lot of noise and distractions going on from political to pandemic. Emotions are running extremely high on both sides of every argument, and there doesn't seem to be a middle ground anymore. And we are seeing the divide intensify. Excuse me. I fear that a lot of what we see and a lot of what I hear works into my own personal insecurities and potentially my paranoia of conspiracy theories. However, that's not important. Here's what's important. How do we respond? How do we respond to all of these things? I want to challenge and encourage you to stop and take a serious personal inventory and status check on your personal spiritual growth and position right now. Consider the reactions and noise around you. How do you react? Are your first thoughts, how do we respond in a biblical manner? What do we do that's honoring to God? Or are our first thoughts, I've got rights and privileges and I feel like, are we considering others in our response, or are we focused on ourselves? My mask, it makes me uncomfortable, it's hot and blah, blah, blah. Or my mask potentially protects someone else and it sends the message I'm caring about somebody else. I'd like to challenge and encourage all of us to consider the following verses, and there's going to be a lot of them, and at the end I'll give you an email address, podcast@hoperestored.org. I'll give you an email address where I can send these to you if you're interested. But for now, I'd like you to think about it and pray, read the verses, pray over the verses, memorize the ones that you can, commit them to your heart, and deliberately think, how will you act in light of these verses? How will you act in light of what God has given us in His Word? And finally, I would like you to commit to intentional actions that are consistent with the principles that these verses teach. So let's get through it real quick. Don't slander. Don't slander and gossip. We all know this. We've heard it our whole lives. Don't slander or gossip. It's not polite. It's not glorifying to God. It's just a bad thing. But consider these verses. And these are just a few of the many in the Bible. Proverbs 16:28. Proverbs 18:8. Proverbs 20:19. Romans 1:29. 1 Timothy 5:13. 2 Corinthians 12:20. James 4:11. Ephesians 4:29. And Titus 3:2. Then I'd like you to think about, what is our witness to outsiders, to non-Christ followers? What's our witness? Consider 1 Timothy 3:7, Colossians 4:5 and 6. Then I'd like to talk about don't be distracted. And here's some verses to consider, and these are just a few of them. 1 Peter 5:8, Romans 12:2, Matthew 6:34, Mark 4:19, and Hebrews 12:2. I'd like to remind us that all of the noise and confusion feed to an overwhelming distraction on all else that's going on in life. Susan asked me the other day, what was on the news before the pandemic? I believe that distraction is one of the greatest tools of the enemy. The devil uses it to steal, kill, and destroy mankind. I believe this is the point where we have to, as Christians, as Christ followers, we need to acknowledge that there is one priority. The priority is not are you on the right or the left? Do you have the right answer? Is your opinion of any value? No, the one priority is the gospel of Jesus Christ. In this acknowledgement, we need to increase our resolve and make sure of our own personal salvation first. Then we need to deliberately think about the great gift and sacrifice. Wow, what a great gift and sacrifice that God has given us in calling us to a personal relationship with Himself. We need to be awestruck. We need to be awestruck by the glory and power and majesty of our God. We need to act from a position of gratitude. We need to deliberately think about the reality of eternity. All these things, well, they'll lead us to a greater and deeper prayer life. They'll lead us to a greater commitment to live intentionally focused on Jesus. They'll bring a fire, or they should bring a fire to us to be His salt and life, a fire deep within us. We need to be salt and light to a world that is on the fast track like a freight train with no brakes, headed straight for destruction. We have the good news. Everything screams at us that time is short. Be excited about the second coming of Jesus. Say Maranatha. But don't get lost in that. Don't get lost in that. Stay focused on what God has commanded us to do. Go and share the very, very great news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Share it through your lifestyle. Share it through your actions. Share it through your words. Be the salt and light to a dying world. If you're listening to this and you have questions about salvation, if you have questions about what is all of this about, boy, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to respond and interact with you. If you have other questions or comments, or if you want a list of these verses, please write us at podcast@hoperestored.org. We appreciate you guys watching and listening on our podcast. We appreciate your subscriptions. And we're excited to talk to you again next time. Thanks for being there. Blessings to all of you.